Okay. But then you mentioned that a lot of people then heard about this mantra rock dance.
After the Swami came, his arrival was written up a couple of times in the local newspapers, and then when the mantra rock dance, it became a bit of an underground phenomenon.
Could you describe that night at the mantra rock dance? Like, what happened? What would you see if you walked into that room?
Well, at the mantra rock dance, it was called a mantra rock dance. It was a name which we had to really labor over to come up with. What were we going to call this event? Was a very unusual event. It started out with one of the bands playing, and then at about 10:30 at night, the Swami walked in, and the people who were present, mostly young, sort of beat generation people, parted and made an aisleway for him to walk up to the stage. And he entered onto the stage. There were a few steps to go up, and then sat down on some cushions. And then Allen Ginsberg, who was presiding over that part of the event, said that he was using kind of like space jargon, so to speak, and he said that the Swami came. I don't know. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it was kind of like the Swami came to a place where he was very much needed. And if you ever take too much LSD and you want to get stabilized on re-entry, those were the space terms they used, stabilized on re-entry. This is the place to go, 26 2nd Avenue. And then Allen Ginsberg led the crowd in the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. And at one point the Swami stood up and joined in, and then gradually all the musicians in the bands started joining in and playing their instruments.
What was your personal feeling upon seeing the Swami again?
On seeing the Swami arrive at the Avalon Ballroom, I didn't know what was going to happen. I just thought it was a very incongruous meeting of him being there amongst all these young people that were in a different culture. But I sensed that something very good was going to happen.
And when he started, he came back to the temple in San Fran, and you started programs. How did your feelings about him perhaps progress or change, and your interactions with him?
My feelings about the Swami didn't change very much after the Avalon Ballroom, when he returned to the temple on Frederick Street. I just thought that he kind of took the event in stride, that it was part of what he was doing, and it was a very big gathering. One of his young followers left the movement at that time. So he said to us that the Avalon Ballroom was no place to chant Hare Krishna, even though it was a very successful thing in one sense. It was also very unsuccessful in another sense.
In what way, if you could elaborate?
It was unsuccessful in the sense that one of his followers left. It was unsuccessful in that everyone was usually high on something. It was unsuccessful in that it didn't really seem to amount to much. It wasn't written up in the newspapers, and it was just kind of it became sort of a non-event publicly.
Shama Sundar Prabhu, in his interview with us, spoke about this sense of adventure that started to grow with the Swami. You also speak about that at some point you sensed that this was becoming a movement. Could you speak to, was it around that time that you were sensing that this was starting to become a movement, or was it later on?
Actually, the concept that the Hare Krishnas were becoming part of a movement was something that I thought about even before I got to San Francisco, because it had been written up in the New York Times, and Allen Ginsberg was taking part in it. So I thought that it was actually amounting to something, to a major religion. And when I got to San Francisco, I was already convinced that was happening.
And that obviously you wanted to partake in it.
I wanted to partake in something that was going somewhere. But even if it wasn't going anywhere, I didn't really seem to care very much. I just thought, well, this is nice. I'll be a part of it.
And that was largely due to your interaction with Srila Prabhupada, that sort of growing relationship?
I felt that I wanted to be part of it because it was doing something for me, that it was satisfying my curiosity and my seeking mentality. That one could actually be happy in Krishna consciousness for life.
Now, I understand you weren't in New York when Srila Prabhupada had his heart attack. Are you able to describe what happened or what you heard had happened, and then what then occurred in the San Francisco temple at that time?
I heard that the Swami had had a heart attack. It was approximately in April in 1967, April of 67, and that he had been taken to hospital. So devotees kind of got this message that this was happening, and we decided to chant for him, to pray for him, and we even made a tape recording of our chanting and sent it, and it was broadcast on a radio station in New York.
Was it a concern in your mind that